Open the door, I'm gonna break the window. Recon, start me another car. Roll the window down, unlock the door, I'm gonna break the car. Last chance.
You ought to be lucky it was that female there. Because if you ever did something like that to me, I'll let you take me to jail. And once I ever got out of there, I'll hunt your goddamn cop ass down. And when I found you, you would never break nobody else's window. So you ought to take that under consideration, police officer. The way you are, what I'm watching in this video, someone will kill your ass, and you will deserve it.
You cannot do that. You cannot. You
Get out of the car.
Oh my God.
You. Put your hands on the back.
She says you cannot do that. What the system, they don't know about, you police officers can do any fucking thing you want to do. But somebody's going to take care of you police officers. They're going to blow your ass away, buddy. And there's a lot of it being done, and there's going to be a lot more of it will be done.
Right what I tell you to. Do what I tell you. You understand me? Stay right there. Stay right there.
I'm going to go ahead and shut this video off. But if you ever get to see it, what I'm saying, one day somebody will blow your ass away, partner. And you would deserve every bit of it. Goodbye.
The content of Florida U Judge video segments and its website is intended for general information and as a forum to allow for debate and discussion. It is not designed to provide listeners, viewers with specific professional, personal, legal, or other advice. The views expressed by the show hosts or guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as the opinions of Florida U Judge or its owner, or construed as creating an attorney-client relationship or dispensing of legal advice. Personal perspectives and opinions expressed on the blog or video segments are presented as such. You are encouraged to seek professional advice for any challenges, legal or otherwise, which you may have for your specific situation. Hey Warren, thanks for joining me this morning and to discuss some of the issues regarding DUI checkpoints. Can you tell me about a recent arrest that occurred? You were arrested.
Sure. Yes, the city of Coral Gables adopted an illegal policy, and as part of our activism, we decided to challenge that illegal policy. Their illegal policy was insisting that drivers have to physically hand over their driver's license as opposed to merely showing it through the window. Underlying this is my approach is you don't have to roll down your window in a checkpoint. You don't have to roll down your window in a traffic stop either.
Let me ask you a question about that before, and I'm going to completely ask about everything that occurred regarding your arrest. But
sure.
There are some people or some attorneys and some individuals who take the position that the United States Supreme Court has been very clear that if a law enforcement officer in Florida has probable cause for a traffic violation, they can order you to come out of the vehicle.
Well, that's a totally different thing. Ordering you to roll down your window is different than ordering you to step out of the car. Those
Let me
are
ask you
different.
about that. Then you're right. That is totally two different things. So if I refuse to roll down my window, which your position is I don't have to, then the cop can legally say, well, then step out of the car.
Sure, he could. And the whole point of this is, as a defense lawyer, if you're my client, and when the police officer approached your car, you rolled down the window without being asked, or if you rolled down the window on a mere request, sir, would you mind rolling down your window? And you weren't ordered to roll down your window, I can no longer challenge whether the order to roll down your window or step out of the car was a proper order. If you fold early, if you just roll over for the police officer, you are making it easier for the police officer to convict you, whether you're innocent or guilty. You're making it easier for them to arrest you. They're making it easier. You're making it easier for the process to work against you. And just like an attorney tells his client, I want you to remain silent, don't talk to the police, I'm telling you don't consent to searches, and one of those searches is when you roll down your window.
Right, but I'm your
The police
client.
come up to your front door. Would you let them in? No, you wouldn't let them in. You would keep the door closed. Same idea.
Okay, but I understand, but I don't think that the legal principle applies to a home.
Which legal principle?
Pennsylvania v. Mims.
Give them time.
All right, well, I'm not, and then you're right.
They're not-
We'll address it.
Yeah, listen, how many times have you seen police unlawfully invade homes? How many times have you seen stories of them, bursting into a home without a warrant?
But let's-
and later, oops, I guess we shouldn't have done that.
Let's stick with the traffic stop.
Sure.
I do not want to roll down my window.
Me either.
The law is clear that the law enforcement officer can then ask me to come out of the vehicle.
Okay, see, the way you're saying that, I don't agree with it.
Okay.
The law is clear that the law officer can order you out of the car for officer safety reasons. He can't order you out of the car because he doesn't like your assertion of your constitutional rights. Okay, so the point being that when we're in court at a suppression hearing, and the police officer steps up and he says, I asked the driver to roll down their window, and they wouldn't roll down their window. They held up the sign that said they were asserting their constitutional rights. Okay, so what happened next? Well, I ordered them to step out of the car. Why did you do that? Well, I didn't like them asserting their constitutional rights. Are you telling me that a judge is going to say it's okay to order them out of the car because they asserted their constitutional rights?
Warren, I agree with you under that scenario.
Sure.
A judge should, if that's the reasoning for the officer to ask you to come out of your car, because I don't think that a judge would potentially uphold that. But nonetheless, we understand they're not going to say that. They're going to say for officer safety reasons. I asked them to. I became suspicious.
I've cross-examined dozens, maybe hundreds of cops. They're not all bright. Some of them don't speak well. Some of them don't handle the pressure well of a suppression hearing, and they say the wrong thing. But even if the officer says, you say, well, why did you order him out of the car? Officer safety. Okay. What was it about the driver's conduct that made you feel unsafe? Did you observe furtive movements? No. Were their hands in plain view? Yes, they were. Is it your practice to order every driver out of the car on every traffic stop? No. Which was the facts in Mims, by the way. The fact pattern in Mims was that officer had a practice of ordering every driver out of the car, and the Supreme Court said that was okay. Okay, that was the fact pattern. So the fact pattern you have in your case is unlikely to be the same. You know why? Because he didn't order them out of the car first thing. Now, okay, you ordered them out of the car and they got out of the car. What did you next? I looked inside the car. But you're supposed to pat them down. Was the officer's conduct at the traffic stop after he orders them out of the car consistent with officer safety? If he orders them out of the car and then immediately starts looking around inside the car, then his real purpose was a search.
I understand clearly what you're doing. Okay, and I appreciate what you're doing.
It is to put the police officer in a position that's different from what they're used to, and put them on the spot in their suppression hearing as to why they did what they did, and some of the times they will not be persuasive and we will get suppression because their answers are not good. Police officers are often poor witnesses, but if we just give it away, if our driver just gives it away, they roll down the window, if they just make it easy for the police officer to lie and claims he smells alcohol, an odor of alcoholic beverage on their breath, lie and say they have impaired speech when they're not even speaking, when they're from Japan, when they're Latino, when they don't speak English as a native language, and the police officer says they have impaired speech. Why are we giving them that?
What happened with your arrest, by the way?
And what I'm advising other people to do. What I did in my arrest was I refused to follow the order.
What was the order?
The order was to hand over my license.
Okay.
To roll down my window sufficient so that I could hand my license out the window.
You're displaying it through the glass, I'm
holding it up through the glass of the window, along with my flyer that says I remain silent, no searches, I want my lawyer. So my advice to regular people, other than me, and activists may be different, that's complicated. My advice to regular people is once the officer has clearly stated an order, you should obey the order. If the police officer comes up to your window and says, "Sir, would you mind rolling down your window?" That's not an order, and if you roll down the window, you haven't created enough for me to argue that you were given an unlawful order and they didn't have the proper basis for ordering you to roll down your window.
Okay, so some of my colleagues legally here in the Tampa Bay area have said that DUI checkpoints and what you do in refusing to roll down your window and simply displaying the license through the window, that's different from a traffic stop, which their position is you're not able to assert the same, or you're not able to offer up the same resistance that you do at a checkpoint versus a traffic stop. Is that true?
Well, it's an interesting question I don't think there's a clear answer to yet. My view is that since you are less suspicious, since there's no basis for the stop, you have more rights in a checkpoint than you have in a traffic stop. You haven't done anything wrong. So, for example, Pennsylvania versus Mims has never been applied to a checkpoint. And I don't believe that Pennsylvania versus Mims would be allowed to be applied at a checkpoint. Because Pennsylvania versus Mims, the idea is you've been stopped because you presumably done something wrong. In a checkpoint, you haven't done anything wrong. In a checkpoint, do they have it in their operational plan that they're ordering drivers out of their car under certain circumstances? They have to have operational plans about how they're doing it. So my opinion is they're less likely to order you out of your car. They're less likely to have the authority to order you out of your car. And Mims does not apply in a checkpoint. Mims does apply in a traffic stop.
Do you think persons in the state of Florida are able to, in citations that do not require a signature, able to say, I'm not going to roll down my window. Here's my license through the glass, and please just go ahead and stick the citation under my wiper.
So that's a different issue.
Right.
On my flyer, it says, if you're going to give me a ticket, put it under my wiper. Now, in a checkpoint, presumably you're not getting a ticket.
Right.
You haven't been pulled over for anything, so what would you be ticketed for? In a traffic stop, you've been pulled over for going 81 and a 65, then, the flyer says, put any tickets under my wiper. Go ahead and put the ticket under my wiper. You don't need to physically receive it. The issue comes up in relatively rare cases when you're required to sign a ticket, and that does happen.
But what about in a DUI checkpoint when you drive through and then they see you don't have a seatbelt? Now there's a ticket. That's not a ticket you have to sign for. Do they now, based on Mims, because there is a traffic violation and they have established probable cause, can they order you out at a DUI checkpoint?
My opinion is no. But of course, because again, the stop was not based on suspicion, right? And again, what's the purpose of your checkpoint? If your checkpoint is now, by the way, it is my advice to anyone, I don't know if irregardless is the right word, regardless of my views as a DUI lawyer, it is my advice to anyone, wear your damn seatbelt. Okay, I've seen so many cases. I don't understand why people aren't wearing their seatbelts. And if you're going to be challenging a checkpoint, if you're like, let's say you're an activist or you're somebody who's just decided I'm going to go out and challenge checkpoints, or you see you're going to a checkpoint, make sure you crossed your T's and dotted your I's.
What about
don't have an open container of alcohol sitting in the cup holder when you pull into the checkpoint. There's some basic sensible things that people should follow.
What about the traffic?
Your headlight. Make sure your car's working properly. Don't have a bum headlight when you pull into a checkpoint.
No, I understand, but in the scenario of persons that are going to use the DUI checkpoint rights to not roll down your window, what about, or not rights, I don't think that was the correct word, just...
The flyer, if you're going to assert your right.
You're going to use your flyer, and they're going to apply it not to DUI checkpoints, but traffic infraction cases where you don't have to sign for the citation.
Yeah, no, look, my advice is...
Is that something that an average person on the street should be... They should be careful before they do that, right?
So,
because there's a lot of legal complexity and nuances in Fourth Amendment cases and case law where they should be very careful before they undertake to involve themselves in these practices, correct?
Yes and no. See, here's the thing. There's a reason that I've developed this approach. And the reason I developed this approach is I've seen too many cases where innocent people are arrested, prosecuted, and even convicted for DUI. And I mean, I've actually seen innocent people convicted. I've seen plenty of innocent people arrested.
How about minorities that are targeted? Broward County,
How about deaf people? How about deaf people? You get pulled over and the police officer says you have impaired speech because you're deaf.
Right.
I mean, there's all kinds of people who come across police in the wrong way. I represented a Japanese client, a guy from Japan whose English was terrible, and the police officer claimed his speech was impaired. How would he know? How how would he know that the guy's speech was impaired from alcohol versus being impaired by not being a native English speaker? And, especially in South Florida where you have all these native Spanish speakers, native Portuguese speakers, Quebecois, people from Quebec who are native French speakers coming down here. Rednecks. Do rednecks have impaired speech? I mean, you can go anywhere you want with that. Minorities, Haitians. You can say anybody has impaired speech if you want to.
Well, what about...
You don't speak. They can't, and it's recorded. Part of the advice on the flyer is to record the encounter. If the police officer claims you have impaired speech and you have recorded the encounter and you don't speak, then you've got evidence that the police officer is lying.
Okay, so...
And you want that.
Howard Finkelstein, the public defender out in Broward County, recently alleged that the Broward Sheriff's Office is using racist police practice to target blacks and citing them with tint violations. What about in those instances? Is that part of your the reason why you think that the activism that you participate in is also important? Because some police officers use traffic citations for other reasons.
So I am sympathetic. First of all, I think Mr. Finkelstein is an excellent public defender. I think people come down too hard on public defenders. The Palm Beach County Public Defender's Office is also very good. I applaud what he does. That was not my primary motivation. I'm sorry to say, life is what it is. Most of my clients have not been minorities. I came from upstate New York, which has a fairly low minority population. It's largely white. Unless you count Polish, Irish and Italian as minority. The population.
Well, certainly, you're against such police practices.
I'm against those practices, but that's not what motivated the flyer.
What motivated the flyer?
What motivated the flyer was seeing innocent clients arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. The system that we have is unfair. And I initially wrote a book. The book is called Fair DUI. And there's so many things about the DUI system that are unfair. What we have is a system that is just like anything else in government. It's driven by special interest politics. And there is one powerful overriding special interest that affects drunk driving laws. And its name is MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Well, let's talk about that. What about citizens in this country that say, why don't you just roll down your window? It's a DUI checkpoint. The reason that it's being conducted is to keep drunken drivers off the road and to save a life. Why are you being such a stickler with rolling down the window, rolling down the window?
First of all, there's two things. My main focus was not originally checkpoints, but I think checkpoints are wrong. Checkpoints are un-American. I believe they're unconstitutional. I believe the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Michigan versus Sitz in 1990 was wrong. I don't think that drunk driving is a sufficient hazard. It's a problem. I agree that drunk driving is a problem. I don't believe that it is a sufficient problem to eradicate the Fourth Amendment.
Okay.
I don't think that the Fourth Amendment should have been infringed should be infringed by police officers. And secondly,
but what about
one thing we know about checkpoints is checkpoints are not very effective at the purpose the Supreme Court approved them for.
What about the argument that
many police agencies no longer do checkpoints?
What about the position of some people that are going to say, look, you're going to get maybe one or two drunk drivers off the street at a DUI checkpoint, and you're going to save a life by doing so? Perhaps. Why is that?
Why don't we just lock everyone up? Let's just lock everyone up, and then nobody will hurt anybody. I mean, you can make that argument as much as you want. The Fourth Amendment is the Fourth Amendment. I live in this country. I'm proud to live in this country, and I believe we're a country that is governed by a Constitution, and the Constitution limits what government can do. And it doesn't matter whether what government wants to do sounds like it's really nice and it's really going to save lives and all these nice things. The Constitution limits what government can do. It protects individual rights. We could go and say, you could go on a different issue and say, you know what? All these babies are being killed by abortions. Let's ban abortion. Some people think that's great. Some people think it isn't. I think the power of government should be limited.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with whether I think abortion is good or abortion is bad. I don't want government getting in the way of people's individual rights.
Back to your arrest.
Yeah.
So you refuse to roll down the window, you do display your license, and then what happens?
So my arrest, I didn't refuse to display my license.
No, I know. Did I say that? Did I say that? No, you displayed
Yes, you did. Showed my license, but I refused to physically hand it over.
Okay.
So there was a roughly 10 to 15 minute encounter where we're surrounded by, I'm guessing, 30 or more police officers, where they're pulling in like the paddy wagon and another vehicle to block us off so we can't drive out. And the police officer's constantly giving me warnings, although he's never able to, my recollection is he never phrased what he wanted as an order. He always phrased it as a request. It's one of the interesting questions that may come up in the case that follows. He never said, I'm ordering you to roll down your window, I'm ordering you to hand over your license. He says, sir, I'm giving you one last opportunity. I'm going to ask you to please hand over your license. Well, that's still a request. Now, I got to say, when you surround me with 30 police officers and you block my car in, it's starting to look like an order.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Never
Yeah.
clear, and it says on the flyer, I will comply with clearly stated lawful orders. Now, I would consider the order never to be lawful, but I don't think his order was ever clearly stated either. But nevertheless, so he let's suppose we can call it an order. At a certain point, he basically says, if you don't hand it over, I'm going to smash in your window, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then he tried the car door, and by accident, this is comical to us, even to the officer, I think it was funny. We forgot to lock the door.
Oops.
We forgot to lock the car door, so he pulls the door and it opens, and it wasn't my car. And
You should throw that in your flyer, right?
What's that?
Maybe you should throw that in your flyer. Remember to lock your door.
Well, no, actually, I think it was better in the end that we didn't lock the door. I don't think there's any advantage legally to having your door locked. I think the police officer opening the door is already infringing the Fourth Amendment. Clearly, I'm not voluntarily opening my door. He's forcing the door open by opening it himself. So I don't think there's anything to be gained. I would say, actually, no. Keep your door unlocked so you don't have an unnecessarily smashed window. And, look, there's people who do this who are anti-cop. And smashing that window in is potentially dangerous to you and to the police officer. So leaving the door unlocked prevents going through that hassle.
Okay, so they opened the door, and then were you arrested?
They unbuckled I kept my hands up. Somebody unbuckled my belt. I stepped out of the car. I was placed in handcuffs.
So you were arrested for obstructing?
I was, my entire person was searched. My pockets were emptied. And then 2 or 3 hours later, the arresting officer, Sergeant Escobar, decided to unarrest me and issued me a ticket for violating Section 322.15, which their contention is requires me to hand over my license.
Okay, so you didn't get arrested for obstructing?
I was arrested, and then I was unarrested. It's an interesting question.
So, but were you arrested and unarrested for obstructing?
I was not charged for obstructing. And I think technically what he said he was going to arrest me for while he's outside the car was for resisting without violence. When Sergeant Escobar had the cuffs removed, somebody else removed them, and gave me the ticket, he said he decided he was only going to charge me with 322.15, but he thought there was a chance that someone in Coral Gables or someone in the state attorney's office would file the higher charge against me.
Okay, for obstructing.
Yes. So to be clear, just about the arrest, I was handcuffed. I was placed, at a table. I had my pedigree information questioned. I was asked my pedigree information. I was at one point placed in the back of a paddy wagon. Another point, I was placed in the back of a police car. But I was never fingerprinted. Well, I was fingerprinted for the ticket, but I never went through the full fingerprinting process. I never had a mugshot taken, and I was not taken to the jail.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of in a great. I'm sorry. To me, as far as I understand the law, I was arrested, but I was not. The arrest was not completed.
Got it. Yeah, the statute is 843.02, and it has both the resisting without violence and the obstruction.
Okay.
So, okay, very well. So thank you for joining me this morning and going over your recent experience. And so you guys are going to be filing a lawsuit against the...
We're going to be filing in Southern District of Florida in federal court. And just so people know, my website is fairdui.org, FAIRDUI.org.
Let's play that
I wrote a book called Fair DUI. It's on Amazon. It's only 99 cents on Kindle. It's under $5 in paperback, and it's got great reviews. And I only planted like 3 or 4 of them. The other 50 or so are genuine. I don't know how many reviews there are, actually. I lost track. But it's a pretty good book, and it gives good perspective. The book does not talk about the flyer. The flyer came later.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to receive notifications of future shows, just hit the subscribe button. Got a question about today's topic or a topic you'd like covered? Email your question or topic to info@floridayouJudge.com. If your question or topic is selected, you'll receive a free Florida You Judge coffee mug. And remember, lest our elected public servants forget, we the people judge. This is Heidi Oropesa. Till next time.